Hi, everyone. Welcome to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. I'm Langdon DeMett,
And I'm Julian Taylor.
and welcome to our podcast. Welcome back to part 2 with Tim and Jason. Let's dive in. How do you talk to? How do you work with? What are your expectations for EHS with an aged worker versus the young? And that's another aspect of it. It's a massive challenge of how do you talk and kind of portray health and safety matters to both, because they're at various ends of the spectrum, whether it's training, whether it's just simple awareness, whether it's creating a hazard analysis, whatever it is. There's so many obstacles that we have to overcome. What are thoughts around that when we think about it from that home life perspective for organizations? What are some best practices?
What I can pick up on, especially from some of the major, huge projects that are happening in the UK at the moment, because of the skill shortage, there's a lot of guys in the 60s, even 70-year-olds, still at work doing the work they should not be doing because there's such a skill shortage. So these guys are there, and some guys are earning a lot of money, but you can just tell by the they don't want to be there at work. This hour when this is finished, you can just say the morale of these guys is at rock bottom. So what's their attitude to safety? And again, we've historically looked at the 50-year-olds to be the mentors for a new generation coming through. Well, you've got guys in their late 60s, well, they're not making great mentors for the youngsters coming through with the attitude they have. They hate everything. They hate safety. They hate the job. They hate the world. They hate being away from home. They hate everything about their lives. And I found on some of the projects where they're earning massive amounts of money, they're away from home because of the drug and alcohol laws. They can't go to the pub after work like they used to, so they go for a few pints. I was told that a lot of projects, the guys have got serious gambling habits because they sat in the digs, they've got money in the bank, and they're just wasting loads of money. So, and then we look at the youth, the problems with youngsters. So the mental health thing's massive. It affects absolutely everybody.
And of course, with old people, you've got fatigue. As we get older, we get tired more easily, especially if we're not looking after ourselves particularly well. And one of the other great causes of human error is just being tired. Everything is worse.
I attended a job for a client last year, and was told on one of the sessions the guy he was 75. He was a steel fixer, 75 years old, and I expected this young, spindly like guy walking in. Probably looked like 65. This guy looked 85. There's no way this guy. He walked in and fell asleep. Got sat down, fell asleep, and I didn't take any offence to it because I thought that guy's absolutely shattered. 75 years old. It's like the most. But so we can't get still fixers. All our still fixers have gone to a major project, Hinkley Point. So we can't get them. So we're just taking what we can get.
I think it was your talk, Jace. I think that's what that was.
Yeah, probably too. Yeah. It happens more often. I was just making a case for myself. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say though, Tim, I think it's a really great point. Is just the whole sleep thing and sleep deprivation is got to be a sort of major cause towards incidents. And again, I don't want to keep banging on about smartphones, but again, the whole our existence is in front of screens these days, isn't there? And again, there's clear science that says that has a knock-on effect in terms of people being able to sleep.
Absolutely, all the blue light and the red light and all that good stuff, and frankly, I mean, beginning to sound like a grumpy old man, but the world really has gone stark staring bonkers, isn't it? It feels like we've just lost the plot. Everybody's arguing. Everybody is going down echo chambers of similar thinking. Everybody's lost the ability to discuss and disagree. If you don't agree with me, you must be the devil, and anything that it's just, I really, as Langdon said, how do you put the genie back in the bottle? I have no idea, but I do know that as I look around, it's just bonkers.
And I think that's a great point, because how long ago was this? Maybe I was still at the organization before the one I was at before here. So maybe 8 to 10 years ago, we were saying that the perfect storm was occurring. Comorbidities were up, healthcare costs were up, the aging workforce. Well, you look at it since you look at over the last 10 years, really since COVID, a little before, the polarization of people, to what Tim was just alluding to, where you can't disagree, the technology aspect that's just creating a disaster, and then the younger generation, that you have some that might see things as their parents or grandparents who want to work, but then so many others are just, or you have that, whether it's entitled, whether it's just a higher expectation. The perfect storm has become so much more perfect than it should have been. And I use perfect in a very negative light here, that we're trying to help so many organizations and work with them where health and safety, it's a different animal because of those exterior factors that are playing a crucial role, but people aren't considering, workplaces are not considering, C-suite sometimes, I don't know that they consider that the way they used to, because it's changing so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think I referenced that program in the middle of watching it on Netflix, Adolescence, and you've got to get your head around the fact, if you're doing any sort of strategy and planning, 10 years from now, this is the generation of mid-20s people who are going to be doing all the heavy lifting. They're the ones who do all the hard work. They get on the phones and they do the sales and they load the vans, and and they climb the scaffolds, and they're the heavy lifters, and it's terrifying. It's actually terrifying, and we need to be proactively trying to help with this and anticipate it, and not just crossing our fingers, or worse than that, blaming them. They're all a bunch of idiots with the attention span of a gnat. What can you do?
I think a lot. I've been fortunate enough. It's been years. I heard Jason speak to us a while back. And Jason, you can say I'm not going to answer that. I don't think you will, but you experience. I mean, when you were younger, early '90s, hey, '80s and '90s were a great time. Things have changed. You faced the CIF. You experienced true CIF incident. You went, I know you were having some issues before, some problems, I should say, post as well. You overcame that. What are some things that you would say, top 3 to 5, that helped you overcome it? Because now, when people, sometimes they don't even have to face an incident the way you did, and they're mentally experiencing some of those. How do we overcome that? What are some things that you would suggest as top 3 to 5 that really helps you get through?
It really forms part of my presentation today. So my first part is the impact of my action, and the second part I talk about the why, reference to why I did what I did, talk about the ethics score and all that, and then the final part of the presentation is I talk about the bounce. I want to tell people how I've turned my life around, and over the last 7, getting on 8 years, well, I can say I've actually started to turn my life around after 25 years of really struggling and sort of drinking myself through day-to-day life, really. Gratitude plays a massive part. I'm very, very grateful. I love my life today. I'm in a really good place. I love everything about my life. I've got 2 granddaughters I dote on. But gratitude for me was a big learning thing. And finding gratitude also when things go wrong. Not just when grateful for good things, when things go wrong. The gratitude thing for me is the easiest reference is my wheelchair. I used to make a big point every day when I wake up, tell people what I've got, but every day when I wake up, the very first thing I always see is my wheelchair. Whereas now I wake up, I'm grateful my wheelchair's there, because I can't go back in time. I can share my story, hopefully influence people to have a better attitude around safety, but I can't change it for me. And all I can change is my attitude. Instead of changing my attitude, and I'm grateful for my wheelchair, I look at my wheelchair as the things it's given me. I've worked with Ted, got some amazing business, travel the world, live in a nice house, got all the things. But my wheelchair, got an MBA, Global Wars, whatever it is. But my wheelchair is the thing that's drove me to these places. And I say, which is quite bizarre, I say my wheelchair has probably taken me further in life than my legs ever would have done. Which I'm certain I can get a wheelchair, but what I'm saying is I can't change for me. But the point I'm making about this, and I go back to, so I did my well-being, did my breathing, my exercise, diet. I don't drink alcohol anymore, 4 years sober. I did some big things, did some small things. but my well-being journey will never end till that day I'm not here anymore. My well-being journey will continue. But the point I try and make at the end of all this is, take Jason back to 1993, speaking up, okay, might have spotted it on the day. My well-being is the only factor that I know would prevent me from happening. So look how I've changed my life today. And then when I finish a presentation, I get quite often, at least once at a presentation, where some of the audience will say, I am you just before your accident. You made me aware that I'm not going to have a wife, I'm sleeping on the settee, I'm drinking too much, I'm not eating properly, I'm not playing football no more. I'm you. I'm doing exactly what you did before your accident. And as Tim said, being proactive and realising if I actually work on myself a little bit, so yeah, I might be on a bit of a bad time at home, but I come to work where I've slept properly, I've had breakfast in the morning, I'm fit for work. Surely I'm a better worker at 8 o'clock on a construction site than someone who's had a bad weekend, who's been to a pub all weekend, who's fell out with his partner, not took his kids to the park. I'm still at work on a Monday morning. So who would you rather have? Who would you rather have on your site? And it's not just about safety, as Tim says, it's about profit. It's about a bloody good profit for the company. So I'm a better worker, I'm more focused, I'm more likely to make less mistakes, but also I'm more likely to speak up about my own problems and maybe if I see someone else working on safe. So for me, and that's why I bang the drum constantly, and I get ridiculed a little bit from some people for, it's well-being, speak about safety. No, it's not. It's about recognising a connection between the two. So, yeah, I've changed my life by doing what I do. Hopefully inspire people to not be like me, actually inspire people to be like me. And that's the biggest thing I can try and do.
Yeah, if I could jump in, and when we talk about this holistic piece, we say, you get your culture right, a really strong, vibrant, engaging, fair culture. You get less turnover of your best staff, less presenteeism, less absenteeism, more discretionary effort, fewer spurious claims. You get better mental health, better well-being, fewer accidents. Yeah. Apart from that, why would you bother, really? I mean, because that's got to speak as clearly to a CFO as it's going to speak to somebody who's head of health and safety. It's just about, our people are our greatest asset. Well, I'm not sure all organizations say that. I'm not completely convinced all organizations live that.
It's a challenge again, another modern world challenge. I suppose it's always been around, but it's that shift from that pure focus on profitability, isn't it, into people, and actually the people are what make your organization successful. If you look after your people, the success will come anyway. We talk about it all the time. How do you shift that focus so we're looking after people? And I love it using some old-fashioned words here like gratitude, and I talk about, I don't know whether you've heard of Ken Blanchard, who talks about servant leadership. And again, it's old-fashioned words, but actually they work. So actually, if leaders are starting to behave like servants and to look after the people that they're leaders of, you start to get a different reaction and start to get different behaviours from people.
Yeah. I mean, who's this Ken Blanchard? What's he ever written?
Well, he's maybe not as prolific as you, but he's not the odd good thing out, hasn't he, Tim?
Yeah, one or two have sold quite well, I believe.
Yeah.
One a minute and all that.
Yeah. But again, he's a great guy, isn't he? And it's getting people to recognise as a lead what is leadership all about, and it's not about profit. It's not just about profitability and success, is it? It's about the way that you behave on a day-to-day basis.
Depends on the leader, doesn't it? And some classic case studies of people who drove fantastic growth in their organizations until it all went spectacularly belly up. I'm sure you can imagine the big oil and gas company that I'm talking about. And a lot of that for a while. There was talk that for a while the ones who first blew a place up were the best behaved at meetings that finished with anybody got a problem with those cuts. No good, get on with it then, And so they were the golden boys because they squeaked the least until it all went spectacularly wrong. So if anybody's watching this and they're thinking that Jason and I are making sense, we put together a charity book of articles, one of which covers the Boeing experience, and all the money goes to mental health charities. So British Safety Council. If you go on the British Safety Council website, you can track down the book as an e-book or as a hard copy, and every penny goes to mental health charities. So.
And it's a great book as well. It's a good read. It's a good read.
That's very kind of you to say so.
Yeah. So, but one thing I did want to talk to you about, Tim, was because I love pies. What's blue pie?
Yeah, it's to try and explain. It's the effort score to an extent, crossed with human physiology, because we like to talk about a person on their very best day is going to spend on average 5 minutes away with the fairies. Because that's the limitations of human physiology. So we talk, for example, about sport. Football, rugby, hockey, sports like that. They're professional athletes. They can run for 90 minutes, 80 minutes. It's the referee and the crowd need a break because 45 minutes is kind of you're out the limit. And so organisations that say, if we've only had 4 accidents last year or last month or whatever, and they were all idiots tripping over stuff right in front of their feet, if only they paid full attention, we'd have been okay. And what we say is a much better approach is to say, look, in the 50 minutes on an average day when you're bright and alert, if you tidy up the trip hazard, but it's not there to trip over when you come back around the corner away with the fairies 10 minutes from now. And so we try and use blue pie slices, and then of course all the stuff we've talked about: fatigue, mental health problems at home, PTSD, all that stuff. Big blue pie days when you're away with the fairies half the day, and people seem to like it. It's a very user friendly way of showing physiological limitations. So
I think it's a great analogy. The other thing, I'm sure it was you mentioned it as well, was the importance of sort of friendship in the workplace. I didn't know the sort of, and the importance of actually people looking out for one another. Not sort of trying to think where I'm going with this, but again, I'm pretty sure you're sort of talking about, again, it's trying to look at things holistically, looking at everything. It's not just about leadership and it's an interesting one as well from your perspective, Jason, on a construction site. How does that play out? Will people look out for one another, or does again some of the sort of culture that's built up in construction, for example, prevent people from saying stop?
Here's one example from Sunday from the football, Liverpool versus Newcastle. Now, I'm sure there's people on building sites who had a really good weekend or a really bad weekend are affected. Did you drink too much because you're celebrating, or did you drink too much because you're commiserating? I mean, some people take football to the extreme. And I'm sure if Newcastle had lost that cup final, there'd been a few more sore heads in Newcastle. You know what I mean? On Monday morning. So if I was a manager, I should know who I need to speak to on a Monday morning. I should know which guy is going to be really in a bad mood for football. He's probably had too much drink. So how do you learn that? You don't learn that I've known your people. Do the managers today put the time in to get to know their people? And realising so-and-so having a bad day, just by his manner, how he walks on site in the morning, you just know he's not himself. And I think it's not there anymore. It doesn't seem to be there like it used to be.
Being close to one another.
Yeah. So, you sign the sheets, we've trained you, you sign the sheets, you know what you do, now go and do it. And as Tim said, get it done safely by Friday. And that's it.
But the point you made before, Jace, I think is really important. In our day, you had to talk to your colleagues.
Yeah, you had to.
You couldn't nip into the manager's office and ring your wife. I need to give it another ring. I've just remembered something else. It was just, but these days we're all,
continually attached. Yeah.
Oh, you're looking at sporting highlights, although I'm not, obviously, as a Welshman.
I've tried not to mention it, Tim.
I was there with my son. Oh my God. Anyway, moving on.
I mean, I think it's vital though. We talk. Jules gives me grief. I talk about camaraderie all the time. My undergrad 20 years ago, I remember the first day of chapel every year. The president would get up there and he would ask, does anyone know what camaraderie is? If you can spell it, you get $100. But then he would go into, why does it matter? And it's all about looking out for one another. It's about caring for one another. And I think in the workplace, it's so much the same. When I was my plan was to be an optometrist, and I began working with a friend of mine who is an industrial hygienist, and gone to church with him. I've known him for years, and he was a pharmacist that hated pharmacy because he wasn't able to be out there and talking and really working with people. And he became an IH. And I can remember every time, and I can honestly say every time I've ever gone out with him doing IH consulting, these are companies he might go twice a year, and he talks to everyone. And just thinking about that practice in place, and the importance of that even if you don't know him, hey Jason, how are you? Is fam good? Any playing any sport? I mean, just little things that you don't think about, but honestly, they can. Somebody could be having a bad day. Your wife and you got into a fight or whatever, and just spark something that can sometimes that can create a positive spark that I don't know that I think we undervalue, and a lot of times we're not putting the emphasis that we should.
It's creating that culture as well where somebody may just possibly come and talk to you if they have got a problem. I remember working. I used to work for a business, and we had a warehouse, and the guy who was the assistant warehouse manager was the most miserable git you've ever met in your life, and nobody would talk to him. And I just saw it as a challenge. So every single day I would walk in and deliberately walk in via the warehouse, and I'd walk in, I'd go, "Morning, Paul, how are you?" And at first he would just treat me, he would grunt at me in the way that he would grunt at everybody else. But actually what you found over time was it got to a stage where I would walk in and he'd go, "Morning, Jules." And one of the biggest sort of simple phrases people can think about is behavior breeds behavior. The way you interact with people defines the way that they're going to then react to you. And actually, he'd probably become the person he was because of the way he'd been treated before by other people. So, as a supervisor, as a manager, even just as a friend or to somebody on work in the workplace, you've got to make that effort, haven't you, to just go and talk to people. And one of the things I talk about with leadership is what do they do when they go to site? So when you get a senior leader of an organization, what do they do when they go to site? And so often what you see is they rock up, they park their car in the car park. They often ignore the behavioral safety stuff that they've been told to do, like reverse parking. They just slap it in there. They walk in, they go up to the meeting room where they're going to have their meeting. They have their meeting, and then they walk out again, get in the car and drive off again. And they haven't talked to anybody. So how does that leave people feeling within that organization? And you talked about the FU score earlier. Well, that's just ramped your FU score up, hasn't it? Because they go, these guys don't care about us. We're just numbers. Whereas actually, if that leader comes to site and deliberately builds in a bit of time to be able to just go and walk the floor and talk to people beforehand and say, how are you doing? How's the job going? What have you been doing this morning? It doesn't take much, does it?
Jules, he doesn't have to speak to everybody.
No.
If he spoke to me, I'd say, "Guess what I saw today?" And I would share that message.
Yeah. And that's the big thing, isn't it, Jason? The CEO came and talked to me today. Yeah. It doesn't take a great deal. Some of this stuff is really simple stuff, isn't it? If you can get people to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like the Undercover boss. I think it's in Britain and America. They always learn loads. They always learn loads. And for me, to get to the psychology of it, black box thinking. Obviously aviation is on a downward curve at the moment, but it's all about learning. But they always learn loads. But the second thing that I always find fascinating is when they get inevitably they get the person in and they say, I've been working with you for the last week. You don't know I'm the boss and all that, and it's fantastic. And you're going to get a promotion. You're going to be head of whatever. You're going to have your own office. They always go, "Oh, fantastic!" You wait till I tell the wife or the husband, more money, parking space, everything, excellent. And then they say, and just on a personal level, I'm just thrilled to think that I've got employees of your quality out there. That's really that personal touch. They always well up. They nearly always well up. And the front bit is money, car parking space, prestige, great. The back is personal worth, back brain, front brain, back brain. And if you can get in the back brain, you can make a big difference, because the famous Maya Angelou quote, people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but they never ever forget how you made them feel.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
you can do that well. You can move mountains.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic quote to wrap things up on. Don't know about you, Langdon.
Totally agree.
Okay. I normally hand over to Langdon to wrap it up at this point. I'm going to say, Tim and Jason, thank you. I'm sure we can get you back and do another hour on this. I think it'll be fairly easy because we've got loads to say. Where can people find you if they want to contact you or see what you're doing, guys?
On the website is the easiest. A new website coming soon.
New website.
Got a website needs coming up tomorrow. We're having a new website. Yeah, it's on the website. Anker and Marsh are what we do. Yeah, quite easily.
Yeah. And after Saturday's result, at the local branch of Samaritans for me, really.
Tim, if you need some counselling, give me a shout, Tim. I'm happy to counsel a Welsh guy on the rugby.
Don't.
Okay.
I just wanted to finish though. Langdon, did you say you wanted to be an optometrist?
I did.
Yeah, I just can't see it myself.
Oh, boom.
I know, it was a long time ago,
Sorry.
Oh, that's good. We do appreciate Jason, Tim. We appreciate your time, appreciate your story experience. I think it's vital for organizations, and it's also something that we can take and try to help others with. So for all you listeners, we appreciate you joining in. We appreciate your time. And as you're going about your day, as you're going to the workplace, as you're going home in the evening, remember to just take an extra second, stay safe, stay healthy, and watch each other's back out there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you stream your podcast, or you can visit us at evotix.com.
And if you've liked today's podcast or you found some value from it, we'd really appreciate it if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review or a rating. It really means a lot to us. Thank you.